I'm Craig Wheatley, and I am very excited to be able to welcome you here today to my presentation on the Frayer Model. And the Frayer Models actually was introduced to it when I was in my undergraduate degree at Newberry College, and our professor taught us how to be able to use this, and I actually use it frequently within my classroom, and it's a great tool, and I can't wait to share with you about it today. Now, the Frayer model is a graphic organizer that's used to build student vocabulary. In the model, students are required to define vocabulary, apply their knowledge by producing examples and non-examples, and giving characteristics or drawing a picture to illustrate the meaning of vocabulary word that is located in the middle of the diagram. During today's presentation, you are actually going to see a little bit more of how we break this down and what actually occurs. But this is really what the strategy is, a description of that. So, how can you actually use the Frayer model? And what can you actually do? How can it be used for instruction in your content? Well, first off, it can be used to build vocabulary. This is very important, especially with reading and literacy, knowing the vocabulary words and what they mean. Also, you are able to use it in all subjects for important concepts that are out there. Understand meaning for your concepts, planning ways to use in different assignments. For example, breaking down vocabulary in assignments that students may not be able to know. Solving clues in an assignment. This can be across all different disciplines, from mathematics to science. And also seeing if context is used properly, because students in a Frayer can actually break down and understand vocabulary through this model. So let's now take a look at the model and how a Frayer diagram works. So this is what a Frayer diagram looks like. As you can see, it's a big, huge rectangle with a circle in the middle, and then it's divided into four. So it kind of looks like a window. In this window, you have in the middle the word. Then in the upper left-hand quadrant, a definition. The upper right-hand quadrant, characteristics or an image. When I was in college, we were told to do characteristics, write things down. But over time, this has changed, and I actually realized this too with my own class, that students were not necessarily getting the whole characteristics thing. So an image actually worked a whole lot better because this will help with your visual learners. You also have examples of what it is like and non-examples, what it's not like. So let's take a word, and since I'm a social studies teacher, we're going to use the word immigration. So if we break down immigration, the definition of immigration is a person who moves from one country to another. Some examples would be like from Mexico to the United States, Canada to the United States, China to the United States, France to the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom to Switzerland. So as you can see, you travel from one country to another. Non-examples would be like traveling from the city of Columbia to Charleston, or Atlanta to Savannah, San Diego to Washington, or Arizona, New Mexico. The reason why is because you're moving within the same country, where examples, you are moving from country to country. Many of my students before love to say it was the opposite of exactly. So when I had war, some of them would be very simple like peace. Okay, yeah, that's a non-example. Or not war. No, this is one thing. You're going to have your students delve it down and break it down a little bit more than this to actually be able to see what it is like. Many of the students love to just be very basic. You have to break it down. And finally, characteristics, which could be moving permanently or a job relocation. That could be reasons for immigration, or you can see the picture here of immigrants coming to the United States. This is actually one of my favorite images of immigration I used to use in my immigration unit. All right, so this is a prime example here of a Frayer model where you have the definition, examples, characteristics, and non-examples. A definition, my professor in college told me to always be able to have a definition that was a student's own and what they would create. At the same time, that's not necessarily always the best because their definition can be totally off. Okay. Now, how can you use the Frayer diagram at your particular grade level? As I said earlier, vocabulary, that is a huge thing. Frayer diagrams, I use them for a lot of vocabulary to be able to break it down, especially during time of Reconstruction era, when I had students actually look at Reconstruction, Jim Crow laws, all the different terminology in Reconstruction, how that was a 3/5 three-fifths compromise, all these different types of things. Well, that three-fifths compromise really during the Constitution, but when you're talking about breaking it down, that's what, or yeah, and the three-fifths as well too, with part of coming back into the Union after the Civil War. But you can use this with your particular thing. That's how I use it in U.S. history. In sociology, I actually have it used for different concepts that we would have in class. Like when we would talk about educational psychology, I would use it for hidden curriculum. In psychology class itself, we would actually use it, break down neurons, electrons, all those proton. I mean, the different things that you would actually use in there to be able to the neurons and stuff that are in the class. Um, in elementary school, it can be used to start vocabulary. In science class, you can be able to use it with different chemistry concepts or biological concepts. In mathematics, yes, you can even use this for different, like parallelogram can be a word you would use. And more than three sides is the definition. You give the breakdown, the examples, what's types of those things. Square, triangle, rectangle, but what is it not? A circle or an oval. Um, and then anyway, and how did it work for my classroom? I kind of answered this already, but I use it for vocabulary to break it down. My students would always, in sociology, we read a thing, The Rituals of Necromia. Well, my students wanted to break down necromia. That's really American spelled backwards if you did not know it. And so I told them, hold off on that, but I let them break down other words that were in the class. And that's how it was actually used in there. Students, one of the biggest things I like to see, well, I would see was non-examples. That's a hard one for them to do, and write down characteristics. So you just have to break it down for them. You just can't say, here, do a Frayer diagram. You could do that later on, but at the very beginning, they're going to be like, what? So you have to break it down for them. Again, this was my presentation here on the Frayer model, and I'm very excited to be able to bring it to you, and hopefully you'll be able to use it in your class.